Now I want to show you how I make a bandsaw box from start to finish basically, except for our first initial glue up. That way you can kind of see how you could make a bandsaw box. Now the reason that I do a glue up most of the time for my bandsaw boxes instead of using a solid chunk of wood can still have some moisture inside, and when you cut it up you get checks, cracks, warps, things like that. I started with kiln-dried wood, glued it together, and this has been glued up for several weeks. I know it's dry. And if you are going to do glue ups, make sure you let it dry a day or two before you actually cut it. If you cut the walls just a little bit too thin, or the front and the back off just a little bit too thin, it can cause it to warp from the moisture of the glue. So make sure that you've let that glue dry and cure. Now you'll notice as I cut, I'm able to actually let that piece go. Again, if you're holding down, it makes it more difficult to make those turns. So now we've got the basic outside of that. Now something that I did before we cut this is I made sure the table was perfectly square. Best way to do that is real simple. Take your piece of material, make a simple cut, bring it around back. If the blade will go back into that cut, we know we're level across the whole surface, which is going to give us a perfect straight up and down cut every time. But now let's take our piece, we'll take this to the edge sander, and we want to get this smooth first before we do anything else. And the reason being, when we get that nice and smooth, then when we cut the inside, we don't have to sand the outside and the inside, which could cause those walls to get thin or thick in odd places. You definitely want a light touch. If you put pressure this way, it's going to shoot it off the table. So what I'm looking to do is I want to pull into the belt, not push into that belt. And you'll notice I don't get too far around that corner before I start to figure out another grip point. So as you can see, we're getting all those saw marks off of there. That way, again, we're not reshaping the outside when we cut the inside. All right, so now you have to decide what's going to be the front, what's going to be the back. Obviously, we want to cut the back off first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the maple the back, the cherry the front here. I've got my fence set for about 1/4 inch. That's where it's really nice to have two different saws. I've got one set up for straight cutting, one set up for curve cutting, and I'm not swapping out blades and guides just to be able to make another cut. Now we've cut that back off. Now, something that I want y'all to notice here is it's got a little bit of a rough cut. Whatever you do, do not sand this piece before you glue it back together. All those little marks line up, and if you sand it flat, you're taking away the grain of the material. They don't match up, and everybody's going to notice you cut the back off. One of the nice things about a bandsaw box is you want people looking at it going, how in the heck did he get the drawer out? How did he do those cuts? It's all about making sure everything lines back up as correctly as possible. So now I want to cut my drawer out, but in order to cut a drawer out of a bandsaw box, make sure that wherever you enter the material, you enter with the grain. Obviously, some of these may be a different direction, but the front is what I'm worried about here. By entering with the grain on the front, when you close that back up, it's going to be very difficult for someone to find out where you cut into that drawer, mainly because the cut line will look more like a grain line, makes it very difficult to see where you started your cut. So I'm going to start my cut right here. Now, something that I didn't do, which may be helpful to you, is I like to draw a line just to kind of follow. That way, it's a lot easier for you to get it even all the way around. And the way that I do that, I've learned to do it kind of freehand, but if you just take a pencil and just use your finger as an edge guide, now it's pretty even all the way around. Again, notice not a lot of pressure. Can't stress that enough. Now you notice I shut it off just as I got to the edge. If you go all the way through, you could hit this wall, and if you do, that's a line that you're going to have to sand out. I let the machine stop completely. That way, when I pull this out, that blade doesn't rub against those walls, creating more sanding issues. So now, we've got the outside cut, which we're going to glue together just like that. Our back cut, essentially we're already done with the outside. We just need to clean up the inside and get it sanded after we glue this together. But before we glue the back on, we're going to actually sand the inside with a spindle sander. In the meantime, we'll glue this up and then we'll get started on our drawer. I want to glue this together. You can see it basically has a little bit of a spring to it. Something you can do to kind of make sure it's even is instead of cutting up from the bottom, you can cut all the way across. That way you can glue that back on. You don't have any spring there. I find it's best to have one entrance. So the glue that I'm going to use, good old Tight Bond Speed Set, is put just a little bit in the seam there. And then I'm going to squeeze that together until you see glue coming through on the inside there. That way I know I have glue across that whole seam. Then we'll take our clamps, a little pressure here. That way we've got pressure across the whole seam there. So we'll just take our towel, clean that up a little bit. That way we can see and make sure that all of our seams, front to back and up and down, are lined up properly. They should be smooth. You shouldn't be able to feel a line at all. While we're waiting for that to dry, we'll go ahead and cut the drawer into several pieces so that we can get that glued back up and spindle sanded as well. All right, so we know this is the drawer. We know that this is the front of the drawer. So we want to cut the front and the back off and then cut the inside of our drawer out. Make sure, especially when you have a drawer that is really symmetrical, that you know what the top is and what the bottom is, because an upside down drawer does not hold a whole lot. So we know that we've got it the right side up. I'm going to cut the front and the back off the same width that I cut off the back of the box to start. Sometimes I will edge sand this just to make it a little smoother, but you got to remember, all we're trying to sand is the top and the edge of the drawers. We don't even have to worry about the sides when we glue that back together, and we want everything to match up. So I'm going to do that after I actually cut the drawer itself. Now we'll cut the inside of the drawer out. Now we've got the drawer itself. And as you can see, we glue the front and the back back into place, just like it's supposed to be. All that roughness on the inside we could sand if that's what you wanted to do. We're going to actually put paint and felt on it so nobody's going to know that it's rough underneath. But we'll go ahead and get this glued up. That way we can finish sanding it to fit into the outside of the box. Now again, I haven't sanded those edges. I don't want to sand those edges. I want all those little grooves to match up with my original cut. So we'll take a little bit more of this good old Titebond speed set. Just put that into place. When you line up, when it's kind of got those rough edges, you can literally line up the saw marks so that everything matches dead perfect. Put just a little bit of pressure on those. And then we'll catch one more in the middle. You've heard the saying, you can never have too many clamps. Well, that's especially true when it comes to some of these boxes. So what I will use in a pinch is painter's tape. So what I'm doing here is just making sure everything's lined up as close as possible. We're going to sand this outside edge so it doesn't have to be perfect. Now I want to kind of clean up the inside, and the best way to do that is with a spindle sander. Doesn't have to be this large, it could be a smaller one, but you need to be able to sand on the inside of that, and a spindle sander's the way to go. Now this one I can change those spindles from extremely teeny to large. This seems to be more than enough for what I need to do. So now, like any other tool, there's a direction you can go, and there's a direction you don't want to go. And you don't want to go with it because it will jerk it right out of your hand. You want to go against the way that it's turning. Looks good. Now we're ready to glue our back on. Put our drawer together. All right, so now we want to glue our back into place. We've got the inside sanded. There's a little bit more of our Titebond here. Everything's lining up beautifully. We'll put one more in the center. We'll let that dry. In the meantime, we'll get our box out of the clamps. We'll sand that up just a little bit, just so we can make everything a little smoother. And then we'll get that inside block. All right, now we've got our back glued onto the box. The only thing we need to do is just hit that edge a little bit. I'm going to make sure that everything's good and flush. We'll use our edge sander one more time. You can see that the box recesses in just a little bit further than I want it to, so I'm also going to get this front edge so that everything's nice and flush there as well. You see, we get our edges to where that seam just about disappears. Almost looks like just another glue line. Got to make sure that that front is even though. So we're going to take this, just put a line in there so I can kind of see where I want to sand that down to. Now it's a little bit more even. All right, now when you put your box together, you can see that there's more gap at the top than there is at the bottom, and we want to be able to even that out. Now, we could have used the exact same stuff that we cut out of here to glue to the bottom of the box. A little bit more difficult to line up. The easy way to do this is to just take yourself a couple of strips. I've got a couple of pieces of veneers that I had left over. We'll put it down here for the basic idea. Then we'll put that drawer into place, and you can see that it evens that all the way around, okay? Now, another way of doing this would be to cut the box in half, glue it together. That way you take just a shim out of both sides and shorten it up. But we've already glued the back on, so we can't do that, so we're gonna have to use shims, okay? We want those shims on the drawer, but we want them on the bottom of the drawer, not inside, so that when you pull the box out, you see them every time. I know this is the front of the box, so I'm gonna line those up with the back edge. That way, you don't really see them when the drawer's in place. All right, now we're gonna do the inside of our drawer. We wanna flock that. And the way that I do it is with acrylic paint. Now this was my wife's idea. She's the one that came up with this because she was kind of tired of the pumper and getting this stuff everywhere. So I poured just a little bit of the Kelly green into my cup here. And all I'm gonna do is just paint the inside of that drawer. Now we're going to do this twice, and the reason that we need to do this twice is we need one coat to seal and then one coat to apply our flock. If we just put this coat on here and then try to apply the flock, it'll be very blotchy. Now you'll notice I'm getting a little bit on the edge, not really too concerned with that, mainly because it's not my box. No, I'm kidding. The reason I'm not too concerned is that little bit I'm able to sand off and nobody's ever going to know it was there. And since it's acrylic paint, well, it's not going to soak in very deep. I've got that inside coated really nice. I'm going to let that dry, and then when we apply our second coat, we can immediately put the flock in there. That way, again, we don't get blotchy areas. It's dried for the most part here, so I'm going to put a second coat on this because I want my flock to stick, and the thicker that it is, the better that flock is going to stick. When you apply your flock, if you do end up getting a couple of globs or missed spots, you can actually paint over it again and reflock it. So don't feel like, oh, I've messed the whole box up and I got to start all over. You really don't. It's nice and wet. So we're going to take some of this flock. We're going to put it right in the drawer there. I know it seems like it's a lot, but we want more than we need because we're going to take that drawer, put it in here, and instead of having that pumper where you've got it everywhere, now we're embedding those fibers into that paint. I want to shake it pretty hard because again, we're trying to get those fibers to stick to that paint. Now, when you take this out, you just dump the excess out, and you can look down in there and see that it's perfectly flocked all the way around. Now that our flock has dried, the paint that the flock is attached to, now I'm just going to take an air hose here just to clean it out, and you can see that now our flock is just about perfect in there. Nice and soft, everything's clean. So the last thing that I need to do for the flocking is take a little bit of sandpaper, and all I need to do is just clean those edges up. You can see the paint basically disappears, gives us a nice crisp line. So that way, that's why I wasn't too concerned with taping this off and getting it just right, because it doesn't take a whole lot just to clean that up just a little bit. Now that we've got that cleaned up, we'll slide our box together. You can see everything fits nice and even all the way around. The last thing that we want to do is, if your lines aren't perfectly crisp and straight and you're kind of worried about maybe somebody noticing you did a little jig when you did some cutting, don't worry about that. Simply take that sandpaper, and when you clean up that edge just by rounding it just a little bit, any kind of weird undulations that are in there just kind of disappear. And then we just do the same thing to the drawer. Again, we don't want to take a lot away, because if you take too much away, well, then it just opens up that gap a little bit. So we've got our box cleaned up. It's nicely sanded. Probably best to take it down to about 400 grit if you really want a nice high sheen. But we're going to really kind of bring this thing to life a little bit. We're going to put some good old Odie's oil on there, a little bit of dark. So we'll just use a little kind of Scotch-Brite pad. We're just going to work that right in. You can see it just really makes it shine and pop. You don't want to use a lot. Odie's oil goes a long ways, and if you use too much, it takes a really long time for it to dry. The other thing you want to make sure that you do before you use Odie's oil is stir it up really well. One nice thing about Odie's oil is it's made from tungwall and oranges, so it's pretty non-toxic. It's nice to be able to work with something that isn't toxic. It's got a pretty decent smell to it, so it doesn't smell like some of those different lacquers and things like that. I like being able to put the product on the box or any project that I'm doing. Then once you wipe it down, set it to the side and let it dry. I don't have to worry about dust getting on it or anything like that. It just basically makes it real simple to finish up a project. Do the same thing to the drawer here. Now, once you've let this dry for an hour or two, the more you buff it, the shinier it gets. And obviously your initial sanding is going to help with that. You want to make sure that you get it as smooth as possible. If you're into the real high gloss look, you can get it there. It just takes a little while to do that. Just like that, we've got a finished box.